Well, I suppose where I come from, it's the heartland of hurling really in Galway. And as they say, you're nearly born with a hurl in your hand. But obviously, at 3 or 4 years of age, you'd be out hurling with the older brothers and sisters and playing in the fields. And then you progress to playing with your neighbours, and then you go to national school. And it progressed from there. But I mean, all of our spare time, the only sport we were involved in my area of South Galway, in a place called Levelly Connor, the parish of Ballindereen, was hurling. So it was morning, noon and night every chance we got, and great fun. We loved it. We enjoyed it. We learned, I suppose, the skills without realising we were learning them. It was just generic and something that happened, and playing little games amongst ourselves up in the field, and maybe having stones as a goalpost and things like that. But it was what we done, and it was what we were brought up with, and as I said, we enjoyed it and we had great fun and spent hours and hours at it. At a very early stage, my dad, when we'd be out in the field beside the house, when he'd be finished his day's work, he was a farmer obviously, and we all worked in the farm and worked hard indeed as youngsters and as we grew up. But we'd be out in the evening playing hurling, and my dad would maybe lean on the wall and smoke his pipe after a hard day's work, and he'd be looking out at us, betting the living daylights out of each other. And I remember one particular evening he called me over, and Christy Ring, of course, would be the legendary. He was a big legend at that time, and I suppose that was around the late 50s. And I remember him calling me over and he's saying to me, Noel, he said, you'll be another Christy Ring. And even though, there wasn't any truth in that, but that funnily enough, I can still remember that, and that gave me great confidence and made me feel good about myself. And so that was an influence that I didn't realise at the time, but was a huge influence on me loving the game and playing the game going forward. Then, of course, I had national school. Tom O'Doherty was a Capamore man from Limerick, came in, and he broke down the skills of the game, was the first man to do that, even though we were doing the hooks and the jab lifts and the blocks and striking left and right. No one ever taught us or broke it down for us. Tom O'Doherty would have done that at national school. And then I would have progressed to the college in Gort, and there was a great mentor there and coach Sean Devlin, and he certainly added to that and brought leadership and communication skills and the things that were important to the game into it. And we reached the college's final with him in 1973. Unfortunately, were beaten. And of course, then there was my club, Ballindereen, where I used to cycle back 6 or 7 miles from home. We were at the tail end of the parish. And there was a lot of people there in the club that influenced my career and that I looked up to, and certainly tried to emulate and again improve the skills further and the teamwork and things like that at club level. So there was a number of people at the early stages that would have influenced me. Sure, Joe was a legend. You talk about legends loosely, and the word is used quite a lot, but Joe was a real hero. In my first meeting of Joe I was at the tail end of the parish, as I said, and went to a school in Ballyglass in the parish of Ardrahan. And I remember somebody from Ballindereen coming to the house and saying, look, the under-12s are playing this evening in Kinvara. We'd like you to go back and play with them. So this would be my first time playing for Ballindereen. And I remember cycling to Ballindereen, which was about maybe 6 or 7 miles, and at the village, Joe McDonagh was waiting for me. I'd never met Joe, and Joe came over, and typical of the leadership qualities he showed later in life. Joe was still only a 10 or 11-year-old like myself, and Joe came over to me and welcomed me to Ballindereen and said they heard a lot about me, and they were afraid I was going to play with Ardrahan. So he said, look, we heard all about you, and he brought me up and he introduced me to some of the other players, and we cycled down to Kinvara and played the game. But right throughout life, Joe was a great mentor of mine. He was a leader. His communication skills, his discipline, everything about him was just fantastic. And to play with him and to socialise with him, he was a great singer. He was a great orator. He was, he got involved in so many things in life. But from a hurling perspective, I would have an awful lot to thank Joe for, and his family. But that first memory of meeting him in Ballinderreen and shaking my hand and welcoming me, I mean, you'd expect a 50 or a 60-year-old person to do that. But Joe was a young fella. To have the presence of mind to know that he was a stranger coming in, I was shy, I was nearly embarrassed, but he made me feel welcome straight away and introduced me to the boys, and it took off from there. I was playing well with my club. I played colleges hurling and played well, and I played well with my club, and we were at the latter end of championships in the mid-70s, 76, 77, 78. So obviously it was from speaking to Joe McDonagh, who was a big part of the panel at that time, and we would have had other players, Micheál McTighe, John Fall, Michael Cohen, that were involved with the county as well. And they were all saying, look, it's a shame you're not in the county team and it's only a matter of time. And I was still waiting, but, and dreaming of playing for Galway. So when the letter came eventually, a lovely letter from the secretary at the time, we wish to inform you that you have been selected on the Galway senior panel for the upcoming league. So that was brilliant. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. And going in training then with my heroes, and it was just a wonderful experience. You felt in awe of them, really. They had won the National League in 1975. They had played in the All-Ireland in 75, and they were household names now. And to be in there and be part of it was fantastic. But I suppose the the most amazing thing of all was I worked in the forestry, and I was based in Auckland in Wicklow at the time, and there was no mobile phones that time. Indeed, there weren't many phones either. But I was staying there with a group of other foresters, young foresters, and we had our meal in the evening, and I went up to my room to change and to go out for a walk or a run or something. And one of the lads ran up the stairs and said, "You're some so-and-so. You never told us you were playing for Galway on Sunday." So I said, "What are you on about?" And he said, "Well, I'm after getting the evening press, and the Galway team are on it, and you're playing wing forward." So that's how I heard I was playing for Galway against Clare in Tulla. So drove home that Friday evening, trained with the lads, proud as punch. Another part of my dream coming true. Driving to Tulla on the Sunday. Togging out with the lads again in awe of them, and togging out beside PJ Malloy, and he was rubbing putching into his legs, into his muscles to try and warm. It was a cold November's day. And I said to PJ, why are you wasting that? Give me a slug of it. So, but anyway, went out and played the game and scored a few points, and going back to the hotel in Gort afterwards and having the evening meal and driving back to Auckland and Wicklow afterwards, as proud as punch. And, dreams for me, dreams coming true, and realising that having played and scored a few points that I was able for this and up for this. So that performance, I suppose, gave me confidence. It wasn't that I was played poorly and taken off or anything. So it was great to get a positive start and score and finish the game. And I'm not sure whether we won or not. I think we were beaten. At that early stage, I think, let's get started. There's a lot of work to be done. We've only a short window of time here. So look at it, would have been, you wouldn't have believed it. I don't think I'd have believed it. I did know that we had a very good team, having won the National League in 75 and won the All-Ireland semi-final against Cork. A great performance. I was at it in the stands, obviously. And the excitement of being in the final and the first finals in many, many years. And a good performance, but unfortunately Kilkenny were a great team at the time and overcame us. But I knew from watching the Galway, the county players playing with their clubs, and from working with Joe McDonagh and speaking to Joe, and that there was a real good team here, and there was a real chance of going on to win. And so look, at the time you wouldn't believe it, but at the same time you had to believe and dream that. So I did expect maybe that we might play in a few and win one. But to play an 8 and win 3 probably was beyond my dreams. But at the same time, then I suppose the 75-80 team, we played in 3 All-Irelands and won 1. And then that team kind of fell away, and I was lucky to be of the age that I spanned the next group that came along, the 1985 team to the 1990 team. So I was lucky enough to be with 2 different groups, if you know what I mean. The newer group then, of course, the Tony Keady's and the Pete Finnertys and the Joe Cooney's and all those guys went on to win 2 All-Irelands in 87 and 88 back to back. So look, it was, I suppose, dreams come true, but at the same time, you'd have to look at maybe some of the ones we lost as well. And, you know, you have to feel lucky that you won 1 and to win 3 was great. But if someone told me in 1977 above in Tulla that I'd play in 8 All-Irelands, I'd be kind of looking at them wondering were they in the bar beforehand or were they out late the night before or what. But that's what happened. The first time I was in Croke Park was the 1973 All-Ireland football final, believe it or not. I loved Galway football, still do. I grew up, you know, in awe of the 3-in-a-row team of 64, 5 and 6. When hurling wasn't so strong, I suppose we fell back on the football a little bit. I remember going out onto the pitch in 73 and getting a bit of the soil and putting it in my pocket and bringing it home. So that's what I thought of it. And kept that, and it's my mother, God be good to her, had it somewhere, and it's probably at home in my home house up in the attic somewhere, but probably growing grass and weeds at this stage, but it's there somewhere in a little box. My first championship debut to be picked on the team was a massive, another milestone and another step in the direction of realizing my dreams. And then obviously staying at a hotel and the bus, we'll talk about it later, the bus journey to Croke Park and tugging and going out on the pitch and, you know, I suppose having listened to Miall O'Hare over the years on the radio and the television and saying, here comes Galway. And now being part of that and kind of being conscious of that and running out onto the pitch and looking around and soaking it all in. There wouldn't be a big crowd that time at semi-finals, but I was conscious of the significance of it. And playing Kilkenny then, playing Kilkenny to me was, geez, there were giants. These guys were way better than us. Why should we be out here playing Kilkenny? And we did have that little bit of an inferiority complex at that time in Galway, but thank God we got over that quickly afterwards. But, you know, to be out in the same field as the Eddie Cares and Noel Skehans and all the great Kilkenny players, Pat Delaney, Kieran Purcell, and to be playing against them. And on the day, I think I was marking a fella called Fan Larkin, who was a great hurler and scored a goal from play. So I suppose an awful lot happened. The experience running out onto the pitch, Croke Park, playing with Galway, playing against Kilkenny, scoring a goal, and we were beaten. But it was, again, part of the learning process and a great experience. When I played in Croke Park first, it was more like a field. It was actually uneven. People didn't realise it looking down it, or the cameras looking at it. But it was actually an uneven surface. There was hills and hollows, not huge, but they were there. But it was a coliseum at that stage to GAA people, and it was a holy grail, and it, you know, the 1916 thing and all the significance, political and otherwise, that went on there, and the likes of Michael Collins being at games that you would see photographs and clips on television of, and that, and the history of the place was just hugely significant. I suppose then, as I developed as a player and later on, it did improve somewhat, and definitely did, from the big bat in the dressing room. I don't know, you're aware of that, but when teams went in, when I started off, there was just one big bat in the middle of the room, and everyone jumped in, you know what, and but showers were introduced in the dressing rooms and toilets and different things, and facilities improved. But oh my God, like, I mean, to look at it now, and being there recently on a tour myself with the Báró na Gaillimhe, former Galway Hurlers network. We were up there and we did the tour of the stadium and we did the skyline, and it's just incredible. It's a credit to the GAA. It's one of the greatest stadiums in the world for and some of the fastest games in the world. And I suppose hurling maybe more so than football, but the GAA in general. And what a legacy and what a stadium. And it's just to go there now to games, the hair stands in the back of my neck. And I'd love to be out there playing the surface that's there now. But look, we had our day, and the players, I know the current players appreciate it and acknowledge it as well. And what a wonderful place to go. And it's still as big a dream for a player to go there now as it was in my time, or any time. We were to take an All-Ireland final and the preparation for that. I mean, the important thing was get yourself right the weeks beforehand from a mental perspective and physical perspective, and get focused. And then the next thing was to get on the team and the team announcement, and that was important, I suppose, for fringe players. There was a certain number of players that would be guaranteed. There was always a few that might be in doubt. Then the plans, the tickets, all that went kind of, the media night and all of that was done beforehand. And the players really looked forward into the Saturday to go to wherever they were getting on the bus to hit for Dublin. And of course there'd be different guys from different places in the bus. Some guys stayed in the front, and there was no earphones that time, but they might be listening to a bit of music, or they'd be talking politics or reading the paper or whatever. But there was 8 or 10 of us in there to go down the back, of course, and play a game of cards and fight and beat each other and have fun. Had great fun and distracted us from the game, and in a subconscious way. In a conscious way, but subconsciously you still were thinking of what lay ahead. Then going to the hotel and having the steak and the chips and the onions and the big feed, and which wouldn't be heard of nowadays. We look forward to that because most of us would have been only used to bacon and cabbage at home. So a steak dinner was a big deal. And then you got your room and who you were sharing with, and the next thing was maybe on some occasions maybe have a quiet pint of Guinness to settle the nerves a little bit and just get your sleep. It wouldn't be heard of now either, but at that time it did happen. And the walk maybe up along the canal or somewhere, and the crack and the jokes, and back to the room then. And the next thing there would be hope that you'd just relax and sleep. That happened easily when you were younger and in your first years, but as you grew older and got more tense and there was more expectation of you, personally I found it more difficult to sleep, but in the early years no problem. And up in the morning, big full Irish breakfast, just exactly the wrong thing to do. Eggs and rashers and sausages and hash browns and the whole lot, and tea and bread, and out for a puck around then, and out to the Phoenix Park, and I was letting off steam, getting the feel of the hurley again with your friends, a bit of crack back. Big load of sandwiches, ham sandwiches and salad sandwiches and all of that, and then a team meeting, mass, of course, a group team mass in a room at the hotel, and it was all part of it. There's so much to it, you could spend an hour talking about each segment of it, but just to take you through to mass, team meeting, the sandwiches, then onto the bus, and then this journey to Croke Park was very, very special. There was quietness generally in the bus. At this stage now you were getting in the zone, and you've seen the supporters and you've seen the opposing supporters, and you now realise the battle that lied ahead, and you started thinking about the game, and it was hugely important to comprehend the significance of it, and that you had the part that you had in it, and how lucky you were to be there. And there are a lot of people that would love to be there that weren't there, and didn't get the opportunity to be there, and not that, and the ladies and men banging on the window of the bus and so excited, and there'd be always a few that would have a few drinks too many, and maybe someone might attempt to actually jump into the bus. They'd be so excited. But into Croke Park then, and into the dressing room, and generally a lot of quietness. There might be an odd mess or character, but personally I would be quiet enough, and I'd be conscious of who I'd tug out beside, and Generally a more positive person that, wouldn't say anything negative, because one bad thought or one negative comment at that stage could be important. So I generally try to sit beside positive people, and they'll probably now look back when they hear this and say, geez, I must have been a positive guy, or the guy I wasn't beside might be saying I must have been negative, but you know what I mean. And so then, of course, the build up and out onto the pitch and all of that was so that's a flavour of the build up from when you leave home on the Saturday, and then of course the game, and we'll talk about results and things like that later on. Well, ahead of throw-in probably started on the Thursday. I think that if you weren't mentally in the right place, on the Thursday or Friday at the latest, I think after that it was too late. If you had complacency, or if you had any negative thoughts or anything after that, or any doubts, or it was very difficult to change that in the build up to the game after Friday. You had to really be going to Dublin and going to Croke Park in the right frame of mind, and then it was only a process. If and it did happen on one occasion that the team felt overconfident or complacent about the opposition, and that they expected to win the All Ireland instead of having to go out to play to perform to win it, which are two different things, expecting to win and performing to win. And I remember Joe McDonagh, who we mentioned earlier, after Mass on the Sunday before we were leaving for Croke Park, Cyril Farrell asked him to speak. I think it was 1981. And Joe looked around. He was up in the front, and he looked around in the room where we had Mass, after Mass, and he said, I sense complacency, he said, in the group. And he said, if there is, he said, lads, I can assure you it's too late now to correct that. But he did bring it to our attention. He wasn't being negative, he was being factual, and he was 100% correct. But to hear for the man to sense it and to say it and to warn us of it, to try and get us maybe to switch it from that train of thought to the thought, and we went out and we were beaten by a very good team, Offaly, who were an excellent team, who we beat in the semi-final in 80, and they, having beaten Kilkenny in the Leinster final, probably cleared the pathway a little bit for us in 80, if you were being honest about it. That great Offaly team beat Kilkenny, and we beat them in the semi-final in 80. But they came along and beat us in 81, and but we certainly mentally weren't in the right place for that game. So in the zone is important, in the right zone, and you have to be there in the build-up the week before the game. It's too late in the dressing room. I suppose, again, in the dressing room, it's important that the right things are done and the right things are said there as well. You'd hear some great stories about captains' speeches and that, and I'd have a few, but maybe I won't go into them now. But the things that are said by the manager and by the captain are important. And running out, I mean, I don't know about other people, but for myself personally, I was conscious of the significance of it, but I was oblivious at the same time to 70 or 80,000 people, and feeling, I never felt in awe of it or anything. I just felt, I felt the same as I would run out in a training pitch. Mentally, I just wanted to get through the puck around, the parade, the throw in, and just get a supply of ball and win the ball and get scores and hopefully a goal opportunity and take it. So I personally had no problem whatsoever with dealing with the crowd in Croke Park, or the stadium, or the Coliseum as it was. Or, I mean, it never dawned on me that people were looking down, or there was television or anything like that. I was totally oblivious to that. So maybe all players were like that. Maybe some weren't. Maybe some underperformed because they were conscious of it. I don't know, but it certainly never bothered me. Even when I played poorly, or when I would have maybe missed an opportunity, you get on with it, and get the next ball, and that was my motto as a player, and just hope that more ball and a better supply would come. I was sharing a room with Frank Burke. Frank was on in 75 and all along, and was player in the 75 league final success, and played in the 1980 semi-final, in the 1975 semi-final and final, and Frank would have been one of my heroes, and to be sharing a room with him was special. And the chat before, when we went to the room and went to bed, obviously, and he told me years later he found it very difficult to sleep that night, because as you get older and there's more expectation of you, players seem to find it more difficult to sleep, which might seem simple, but it's usually important. I slept like a log. He had to wake me in the morning, and the usual things then, the mass and the team meeting and the breakfast and the sandwiches and all of the things that we talked about before. But I suppose going out onto the field then, and we harped on it as well, it was a wet day, the puck around again. I just felt, I was surprised myself at how calm I felt and how confident I was. I don't know if I had any reason to be as calm or as confident as I was, but I just couldn't wait to. And at this stage, I mentioned earlier that we were in awe of the Kilkennys and the Corks and the Tipperaries. At this stage, we believed we could beat, we could win the All Ireland and beat Kilkenny. And Joe McDonagh was captain to make it, even more extra special. Clubmate of my own, probably my closest friend at the time, and always was indeed. And the parade, and it was all just again surreal and nearly out of this world kind of stuff, and dreams come true. And having watched so many All Irelands in television and hurling and football as a youngster and that, and now subconsciously here you were living the dream, and felt good. Was on the great Paddy Prendergast on the same day and got a great goal from play. The supply wasn't great of ball, I thought, and I just wanted more ball that day. I felt I could burn, or I just felt really, really confident, and got a great ball in and got a goal, and ended up being voted goal of the year in 1979, and it was just a great feeling, but terribly disappointing. We were beaten in the end. Awfully disappointed, delighted with my own performance, I must say, which was a selfish thing, but terribly disappointed for Joe McDonagh as captain, and for Galway being beaten again after being beaten in 75. A lot of the guys now being beaten again, wondering would our day ever come. But a great experience, a learning process, having played in All Ireland, having scored a goal, and having experienced being beaten and in the dressing room afterwards. And again, and any player will tell you, that's part of the learning process, and preparing you for the future. In 1980, Joe Connolly, of course, was captain, and Joe would have been a very passionate speaker and made a great speech before we went out, and we were really, hitting the ceilings and running out the tunnel and onto the pitch. And most players at that time would have a sliotar in their hand running out to, once you hit the turf, you let fly, drive it down O'Connell Street if you could, the ball. But I happened to be running behind Bernard Ford, neighbouring parish. Bernard Ardrahan, a great hurler, had the game of his life that day, scored 1-5, and probably was the major influence in winning that All Ireland. But running out onto the pitch, Bernard had the sliotar in his hand, and I was behind him, and he swung the hurley, and the backswing caught me and ended up getting 6 or 7 stitches over the eye. So I think it settled Bernard. Bernard looked back and he thought he had me killed, and I think it settled his nerves. He thought, I'd say for a split second, what am I after doing? Maybe this man won't be able to play. And Bernard was very conscientious kind of a fella and felt bad about it. And but I do believe that it was a factor in the great performance he had that day. And I then had to go over to the doctor and missed a good bit of the puck around. But Dr. Mary McInerney was stitching me up anyway, and she was looking at the eye and there was a bit of a blur there, and she said, Noel, she said, I think we're going to have to, take you somewhere to have this eye looked at. And I said, Mary, you have two choices. Either you stitch me up or you take the eye out and bring it wherever you want, but I'm playing in the All-Ireland. So got on with it and played and, had no problem. It probably got my dander up, and I had a reasonably good game as well. I think I scored 3 points from play. So between Bernard and myself, we scored 1-8 from playing the All-Ireland. So, it wasn't a bad omen. Played Limerick, and Limerick were a great team and great Munster champions. And when the final whistle went, I suppose you wonder, is this true? Has this happened? And then the crowd come out and the euphoria, and again, you just want to get up the steps of the Hogan stand, like you've seen in the Colin and John Donlan doing for the Galway footballers in the past, and so many other captains, and to get up the steps there. And I remember somebody giving me a fag. I used to smoke an odd cigarette at the time, not much indeed, but it wasn't unusual to see players having a cigarette up the steps of the Hogan stand at that time. And when I look back and see it now, I'd be disgusted with myself. But in any event, and I suppose being up there in the stand, the story of the next 20 minutes was the two Joes, Joe Connolly's speech, which was wonderful. I didn't understand a lot of it, but I knew the gist of it. And then my own Ballandureen, and the great Joe McDonagh got the microphone and sang the West Awake. And it was just, the hair stands on my back now talking about it. It was an amazing experience. And Joe being captain the year before, Joe McDonagh being captain the year before, and I suppose it was regrettable that he didn't get the opportunity to make a speech as well in Croke Park, because we all know how wonderful an orator he was. But Joe Connolly that day, and as it's historic now, that is one of the greatest speeches of all time. And then coming down to the Hogan stand and going onto the pitch and the crowds again, and you couldn't wait to get to the dressing room then, and meeting your own players and hugging, and then hitting back to the hotel and the pint. And I suppose the one prevailing thought that was in your mind then at that stage was, it wasn't that night, it was getting back to Galway the following day, back to our people, to our families, to our club mates, and bringing the McCarthy Cup back to Galway. And that was a very special occasion. Well, Monday was a long day, I can assure you, after the breakfast. And of course, everybody runs out to the local shop and gets the newspapers and see, did they get a mention, or is your photograph on it, and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of, that's normal enough. And did all of that. And I suppose then at some earlier stage, maybe having a couple of pints. And at that time, then both teams that played in the All-Ireland met up and watched the game together, which thankfully was got rid of shortly after that. But it might sound unreasonable, but I certainly didn't think it was necessary. So back then, and the bus journey down, and it was a long journey. It took us all day to come down, really. We didn't get to Galway until about 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock. We were tired at that stage, but at the same time, then when we seen the crowds starting that loan, going over the Shannon, walked over the Shannon with the cup, and then on down to Ballinasloe and Loughrea and Crockwell and Oranmore and into Galway City and out to the Sacré-Cœur Hotel, or into the square, sorry. And it was throbbing and thronging, and I suppose at this stage people were tired, and a lot of people had a good lot of celebrations behind them. So then after that, it was on to the Sacré-Cœur Hotel and having a full dinner at around 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember the people you really wanted to meet then, and I omitted it earlier after the match 1980, one of the main things I wanted to do after the presentation was to meet my wife, Carmel. And I met her, and I cried then for the first time with emotion, because she had been so good to me, and she was there in the bad days, and she always puts things into perspective when you win and when you lose. And she had made huge sacrifices for me to reach my dream. So meeting her and hugging her was very emotional, and still nearly brings tears to my eyes thinking of it. So meeting my parents then on the Monday night, mum and dad, in the Sacred Court, tired and weary, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning after being in Croke Park the day before and having their own celebrations, and so that was very emotional as well. So lots of things like that, were very significant in the whole celebration of winning the All Ireland. After winning 1980, we felt we were on top of the world and we celebrated, and that went on for months and months, and we did all the tours to schools and our clubs, and bringing the cup back to Ballindereen, my own club, was very special and great memories, and still have great photographs of guys that maybe are long gone, but a wonderful experience over that period of time. But I suppose back to training then for 81, and got over Limerick after a replay in the semi-final, and met Offaly, and Offaly were a great team. We were lucky enough to get over them in 1980, and as I mentioned earlier, I don't know if we were in the right place mentally for that final, but that's not taking away from Offaly's success. They beat us on the day. A late goal by Johnny Flaherty, often disputed whether he passed it or threw it, but it's irrelevant. They were a great team, and they deserved their day in the sun, and they got it, and I'm delighted for them. Johnny, of course, was a Galway man. His dad was a Galway man, and but he was a marvellous hurler, and I would have played with a good lot of those Offaly guys. I did some of my training for my forestry career in Kennedy Castle outside Bor, so I would have played hurling and practiced with Johnny Flaherty's and Pat Delaney's and Mick Clears and Ger Coughlin. So I was delighted for them. 82 and 83 were, a lot didn't happen. We were, as I said, the 75 team were coming to an end, and new lads were coming on board, and I suppose we were rebuilding, and Cyril Farrell took over again then in 85. Picked up a few All-Stars in those years myself, in 83 and 84, which were personally they're a great personal award, obviously, and it's nice to have got one or two of them. And then on to 85, a new team on the block, Cyril Farrell back as manager, got to the final again, beaten by Offaly again, kind of a newish Offaly team as well. So they had a hoodoo on us. We had a great semi-final win against Cork, who were hot favourites on a wet day. Beat that very fancied Cork team, beaten by Offaly in the final. 86, I was captain. Not a good year. Had a great semi-final win over Kilkenny down in Thurles for some reason in 86, and that was the day that we tried the 2-man full forward line, myself and Joe Cooney, and 3 midfielders, and it worked a dream, and used the same tactic in the final against Cork in 86, and Cyril Farrell would always get a lot of criticism for doing that Cork would have been wise to it, and Cork beat us on the day, and personally I didn't have a good game, probably one of my weaker finals, and very disappointed. Maybe felt some pressures going into that game that I wouldn't normally have had, and probably didn't handle it as well as I should have, but anyway. So then we were, having been beaten in 2 more All-Ireland finals, it was either going to go one way or another for me personally and for the team. So that was that era. There was, we had great days and we had bad days, but it was, again, Cyril had built and was building a new team. After 1986 and being captain, and I was pushing on a little bit at that stage in my early 30s, and I wouldn't have been really surprised if I was dropped off the panel. I had my time. I had won my All Ireland. I had got the experience of captaining Galway and all of that, and it wouldn't have come as a bombshell to me, I'd say, if I was dropped. I had kind of half expected it, but contrary to that, Cyril came to me, fair play to him, and reassured me that look, I would be an important part of the Galway team going forward, and that he wanted me to stay. He thought I might retire, I suppose, or give up at that stage because I was emotionally drained after losing that All Ireland, and wanted to get back with my club again and get back to my own club mates and my friends and just go out and hurl for fun again, and all the pressures or whatever you call it, stress of captaining Galway to an All Ireland and losing it, and that brought a lot of emotional stress, I suppose is the word to use. And I just wanted to get away from that then and get back to my club and start enjoying hurling again. But Cyril reassured me, and I was delighted, absolutely loaded my back then. So 87 was a bit of a blur. Certainly carried a lot of emotions from 86, and was quite happy to be part of the squad. Came on as a sub in the semi-final and scored a goal, which was important for the team. Not a great goal, but an important goal. And then coming on in the final and doing likewise again, getting another goal, and winning that 87. And personally, having won my All Ireland in 1980, I had that medal in my back pocket, and I was happy enough with that. But I was now extremely delighted for the rest, this new panel that now had their first All Ireland medal, and to have made a positive contribution to that. I felt, I won't say a father figure, but I felt like this, I had helped these guys to reach their dream of winning an All Ireland, and that was important. 88 then I was back playing with great confidence and enjoying my game again, and really confident, as I said, and got back on the starting team in the semi-final and had a great game, scoring 1-4 or 1-5 from play, and really flying it, and had a slight tweak in a hamstring the Tuesday night after that game and had to rest for a week, but got back doing light training. And on the Tuesday night before the All Ireland, then Cyril Farrell called me aside and told me I wouldn't be starting. So that was a bit of a bombshell. Having scored 1-4 from play in a semi-final, you didn't expect to be dropped, but they decided to select Michael Coleman, who I would have absolutely no argument with. I thought he was an amazing hurler, a massive player for Galway for many years, and I couldn't understand how he wasn't on in the first place. But I just felt maybe there was some other guys that could have, got the chop other than me. But Cyril and management probably felt, look, this guy's pushing on a bit. He has good experience. He might be a guy that would be better finishing than starting the game. So I didn't want to hear that at the time. I was just terribly disappointed. So went away and had a couple of pints and slept on it. And next day I realised, look, you have no divine right to be on the team. You're part of a squad. This is what management want. It's what's good for Galway, and it's what they believe is the best thing to do. So final came on as a sub and got the winning goal as it turned out, and I suppose that was hugely important for me, because it proved that I still had something to offer. It proved that maybe the guys were wrong in dropping me, and it proved that, look, I'm going to prove you wrong, and at the same time getting the goal that made it was decisive. And so there were there was different emotions through those 2 years, but at the end of the day, winning back-to-back All Irelands was massive and huge, and great to be part of it, and delighted to be part of it. The 1990 All Ireland again, I was in my mid-30s at this stage, and still on the starting team for that final. I felt in hindsight, maybe I felt I should have started 88, but maybe shouldn't have started 1990. But I was playing really well again and enjoying my game and full of confidence. And I think 1990 is one we should have won. Definitely, we scored something like 223, and that's a great score in an All-Ireland final. And but on the day, Cork scored a lot of goals, and goals win games. I missed a few myself that day. Great chances, just throw them over the bar. Every time I see them, I look away. But I just felt it was one that got away, and one I'd love to have won and got the third All Ireland, or got the fourth All Ireland, I suppose. There's only one man in Connacht that has four All Irelands. That's the late Joe McDonagh in football, and he won 1956, 64, 5 and 6. So you wouldn't be thinking of that at the time, but I was 37 years of age, and it would have been great to have. I would probably have been the only one on that team that was part of 1980. So look, it was disappointing. I hung around, didn't retire, and I was part of the panel again in 91, and came on as a sub in the semi-final. Tipperary beat as well. So I never really retired. I just got old and went back with my club and playing with my club, and left it at that, really. And there was no announcement, so I wasn't asked back in 92. There was no management. If I was, I'd probably have gone back. But look, it had a great career, and it was a lot of disappointments, but probably achieved a lot more than we'd ever dreamt of. Well, I would have been involved in managing teams and coaching teams, I suppose, even when I was playing with Galway. And I had a great experience with a local club, Bridge, in 1983. They were intermediate, and they were for years trying to get up senior, and they came to me. So I got involved coaching them that year, and did a lot of work with them, maybe more mental than physical, but did a lot of physical as well. And we had great fun and great crack, and I think the lads in Ridge really bought into my approach and my, I suppose, commitment to them, and my attention to detail in management and in coaching, and brought a lot of what I would have been through myself with the county teams to them. And they ended up winning that championship, and that planted the seeds in my head, I suppose. Look, this was fun, this was enjoyable. It was great again to see another club and lads that were years and years and years trying to win a championship, and to be part of that with them. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed winning that maybe more than I did as winning as a player myself, to be honest with you. So I got involved with the Galway Minors in, first of all, it's been 2 years with them, beating a semi-final in 96 and a final in 97, disappointing after a replay, or 95 and 96. Then under 21s, 2 years with them, beaten in the All-Ireland both years by Kilkenny team and Cork, a great Cork team. And then took the ultimate step up to senior in 2001 and reached the All-Ireland, beaten again by a few pints, and the minors and the under 21s were all by a couple of pints. And in 2002 we beat Cork down in Thurles, and played Clare in Croke Park, and the late pint by Colin Lynch beat us. And I was Galway at that time, Galway management, or the Galway County Board. It was traditional that you got a couple of years, and if you didn't deliver, you were out the door. So I had a great relationship with the players in 2001 and 2002. I felt that we were in part of a process. Continuity was important for the players. They wanted continuity. They wanted me to continue, but unfortunately, the Galway County Board don't do patience, and I was just ousted out. I felt I had learned a lot, but a lot more to learn, and I would have loved to have continued on and brought that team forward, and maybe have won an All-Ireland with them. But that was it. Went on to manage club teams after that and coach club teams. But from a county perspective, very enjoyable. I had great players with me at minor, under 21, senior. Enjoyed them all. Enjoyed seeing them develop. Enjoyed seeing them play in their All-Irelands, and didn't enjoy the dressing rooms afterwards. And I suppose it was unfortunate, and probably one of the regrets I would have in my whole GAA career would be that I didn't manage a team to win All-Ireland. That would be a regret, but it doesn't dwell in my mind, but it is a regret. The Galway teams, the one thing we'd done for a number of years to kind of unite or meet up was we'd have a game of golf, particularly the 1980 team. and we used to play. We got somebody presented. I think it was a son of the late great Inky Flaherty, who was involved with the Galway teams in '75 right up to '80. And one of the family presented us with a cup, an Inky Flaherty trophy, and to play an annual round of golf for it. So we did that for a number of years, and we got talking then, and we said, why don't we expand this out to the '87, '88 team? And we talked more, and we said, why should we confine it to winning teams? And we developed it from there, and we talked about why not have it for all teams that played in all islands. And then we talked about, and it would be a close enough knit group of us that were having all these discussions and conversations. And eventually we decided, look, at anybody that played for Galway at any era, in any grade, why not bring them on board? So we ended up doing that, and we trawled all the clubs in the county, and we got information back as to who played minor, under 21, junior, intermediate, senior. We put a lot of time into that and got great support from clubs and members of clubs. There was always someone that would have this information for us. And then we contacted all of these people and invited them on board. So we ended up with about 350 odd former players that came on board. And the next thing then, what would we call ourselves? And Joe Connolly being a Gael and his parents being from Connemara. He said there was an old Connemara word, he said, called borrower, which was a hurler. So we expanded that out to borrower in a Galway, which would be hurlers of Galway. So it's a great initiative. Joe McDonagh, the late great Joe McDonagh, again, our great friend, launched the initiative in 2015. And it has gone from strength to strength. We do lots of things. We'd never be all together, but different groups that have different hobbies. Some play golf, some groups go to the races together. We go to Croke Park together. We do tours together. We did the Skylon and the tour of Croke Park. We went to Ors and Uachtaráin. We've done so many things over the 5 or 6 year, and unfortunately the lockdown has put a stop to it for the moment. But we're now planning events ahead again, and every year we have an annual social, and we honour former teams. It might be minor teams or under 21 teams, intermediate teams, and we've honoured the oldest living players that played back in the 50s. And being at those events where we invited those people in and their partners or wives and families, and you know, some of those players may not have met colleagues since they left Croke Park. There was one particular night that we honoured players from the 50s. And a great player called Jim Fives. He was a Waterford man, worked in the army and played with Galway. And he came over to me, and there was a teammate of his who came out from a nursing home, very ill at the time, came in his bed by ambulance, and the bed was rolled into the function. And he was delighted to be there. Was blind at the time. But Jim Fives asked me, would you bring me over to see the great Ned, my friend Ned Quinn, who was the man in the bed? And I brought him over, and I said to Ned, who was blind, I said, Ned, I have somebody here that wants to meet you. And Jim Fives said, how are you, Ned? And Ned Quinn responded back, Ara, he said, is it Jim Fives? So they both cried, and tears came to their eyes, and Ned said to Jim Fives, he said, you know, Jim, he said, the last time I met you or spoke to you, he said, was leaving the dressing room in 1955. And this was 2018. So it's a great initiative, it's a great organisation to witness and experience those kind of celebrations. And we just honoured those players. We acknowledged that they played for Galway, they wore the jersey. They kept the dream alive for us that won in 1980. They kept the dream alive for those players that won in 87, 88 and 2017 and hopefully 2021. And we acknowledged that, and they appreciated that. And a lot of those have gone to their eternal reward since. Both Ned and Jim have gone, even though it's only a couple of years ago. But we have great stories, great memories, and they're great memories for their families as well, to have been at those events and witnessed those events. And it's an organisation and a kind of a former players network that we would like to see rolled out to other counties and other clubs and in all grades, that it be camogie or ladies football or whatever. And other counties. We invite players from other counties in as guests. We've invited great players from Cork and Kilkenny and Tipperary and Offaly, and they're amazed at what they see at those functions. And but there's a lot of work in it, and you know, sometimes when there's a lot of work, it's hard to get people to do that work. But I'm chairman, and you know, we have people like Joe Connolly and Sean Seelk and Iggy Clark, and I'm going to leave out names now, you know, but we have great people involved in the backroom team. There's 15 or 18 of us in the committee, and look, we all share the workload, and we plan for it to continue. We have great plans afoot for the future, and those players, the former players that didn't have the look of winning All Irelands in particular, I suppose, and that were forgotten really. And felt they were forgotten, you know, and that the young lads now, or the current players, didn't know that they played, or wouldn't know if they met them in the street who they were. Now all of a sudden we brought them into the limelight again, and we would have had Joe Canning and David Burke and current players at functions, and they would have seen what it meant to those old guys. And I think it might have helped those guys as well realise, look, we're only wearing this jersey for a while, you know, we better make the best of it. And I think it might have a little bit to do with winning in 2017. Some of those guys haven't seen the Jim Fiveses and the Ned Quinns and what it meant to them, and you know, and so it's a great organisation and great to be part of it. Well, there'd be a few really that'd be difficult to you know, differentiate, but I suppose the first great experience I had was the 1978 county final with my club, Ballinderreen. That was a really, really memorable occasion. The build-up, local rivalry, draw on the first day, draw on the replay, and unfortunately beaten in extra time, which we still regret. Joe McDonagh, until he went to his grave, God be good to him, regretted going out that extra time. We felt it deserved a third day. But that county final and those games were hugely significant and great. Some of my greatest memories. I suppose the All Ireland in 1980 and winning my first senior All Ireland certainly would be up there at the top, in the top few. And funny enough, then at the end of my career, winning a county junior B championship with my club, Joe McDonagh as captain and Ian Uchter on at the time, and playing with his son, and getting man of the match myself in that county junior B final, and the only county medal I have, that's up there as well. So you know, there's a mix there of club and county, and they are certainly in the top echelon anyway. I suppose if they're good enough and they feel that if they have the dream to play, I suppose it's a question of continuing to practice. The opportunity will come. I had to be patient because I didn't play minor or under 21 for Galway. I was 23 years of age when I was in that room in Aughrim in Wicklow when I got the news that I was on a Galway team. So you just have to be patient, continue to, because there are so many good players now that you have to have an element of luck, I suppose, to get the invite and get the call, and it depends on management and their opinion of you and that. So if you get the call, you know, appreciate it and respect it, and make the best of it. And you know, there's the whole discipline and the way it's gone now. I mean, diet and discipline and hours and hours of practice. The skill levels have gone to an all-time high. Fitness levels, diet, all of those things now are hugely significant. But I would say continue to practice, stay patient, and you never know when the call would come. Well, I suppose with great fun. I played hurling because I loved it and enjoyed it. It wasn't because it was never a chore. It was never anything other than fun and enjoyment to me. Made great friends in Galway, and indeed outside Galway, around the country, in all of my hurling career, both as a player and a manager, and through golf and other initiatives that I'm involved in. It's great to meet those friends from time to time and reminisce with them and have the crack with them and play golf with them in some occasions. And I suppose great memories then as well. So there's the fun, and there's the friends, and there's the memories. Not all good, but we had wonderful times. The bus journeys, the hotels, the build up to games, the successes, even in the failures on some occasions. You built on them and learned from them and that. But regrets along the way, as I said, but great fun, great friends, great memories. Luckily, I was very lucky with my family as well, that they were so supportive. I mentioned Carmel earlier, and her support, and I suppose allowing me the freedom to go and achieve my dream. My parents, first of all, when I was very young, we were farming, and I suppose to allow me the time to go and train with my club and play with my club. So my mum and dad and my brothers and sisters, they would have been all very supportive at a young age. And then my own wife Carmel later, and my family, Aoife, Mark and Patrick, they wouldn't have been around when I was playing, but when I was involved in management, and that, as I mentioned earlier, probably for them as well, I would love to have managed a team to win. But look, we had some great memories, but they were hugely supportive. And I suppose it's on the Monday after a victory or defeat that you want someone to put it into perspective for you. And Carmel always did that, I suppose. And you'll always have the love of your family then to, bring you back down to earth. And it's only a game, and get on with it.